All right, now let's turn to the big story coming out of the weekend. That was the March for Our Lives in Washington. Joining me now, Leslie Marshall, syndicated radio talk show host of The Leslie Marshall Show, and Guy Benson, political editor at townhall.com. Both are Fox News contributors, and glad you are here. So I'd be curious what your thoughts are, a couple of days after the marches that took place, not just across the country, but also there were several around the world. There is a school of thought, Guy, I'll start with you, that the passion that these young people brought to this march, with help from adults to organize, will be somehow translated into mobilizing voter action in the midterms. How likely do you think that really is?
I think there's a decent chance of it because you have a potential for a whole new crop of younger, new voters to get involved in the political process and be motivated to turn out and show up and in some cases vote for the very first time. I also think that we ought to look at this with some skepticism with just the speed at which the news cycle moves these days. We're sitting in March right now. Who knows what's going to have captured the electorate's attention by September or October leading into November next year. So I think there's some truth to it. This will be one of the elements of the electorate and who comprises that electorate in November. Whether it will be exactly this same type of flashpoint in a hotly debated topic months from now remains to be seen. We have no way of knowing that.
Leslie, Joseph Curl from the Daily Wire wrote, I thought something kind of interesting today. He is the father of young millennials, and he said there's no question that the protesters are being played by a liberal media. But the bottom line is simple. The more voices we can hear in America, the more participation we have, the better. Let's hear all the viewpoints and then decide. It's really what America is all about. Your thoughts today?
I don't think anybody is censoring the NRA or anybody who is pro-gun or is in disagreement with the kids that are marching for their lives. Quite the opposite. I think what's awesome is we're seeing our Constitution, our First Amendment in action. I think it's great that these kids are out there protesting and getting involved as opposed to going to frat parties or playing something on their phone or their computer. And I think I would agree with Guy and even go further. I think this is going to make a big difference because of enthusiasm for those especially on the left and Democrats in the midterm that have needed this enthusiasm, and for those that are turning 18 and can vote in this group of people that marched and people who agree with them from what they saw this past Saturday.
Well, let me switch topics then with you, Guy, because Raj Shah, the deputy press secretary, just had his press briefing. He got a lot of questions about Russia, but he also got some questions about Stormy Daniels and that ongoing saga. I was curious where you think this actually would go from here, because if you're looking for a smoking gun, I think that nobody is really saying that they don't think that there possibly that this happened, but they're talking about possibly the cover-up and the hush money. But do you think the story actually is going to go any farther than that?
Absent some proof of further criminality or something, maybe, but probably not. The story or the alleged hook for the making this newsworthy, look, we all know why this is newsworthy. It's prurient, it's a president and a porn star and all that. It's going to get ratings. People want to pay attention to it. But if you want to dress it up into something more respectable and meaningful that, that merits coverage on a show like 60 Minutes, it would be campaign violations on funding. Was this a payoff that was really attributable to the Trump campaign that was not dealt with properly or reported properly? I'm not a legal expert on that. We'll see if there's a smoking gun or something that can directly tie the Trump campaign to that. I just think, and maybe this is just a very cynical take on my point, to me this is baked into the cake. I totally believe Stormy Daniels that the president had an affair with her back at that time. Her story matches other women. I think that Trump is sort of a lecherous person who goes through spouses and cheats on spouses. He's bragged about it in the past. We knew this going into the election. A lot of people decided that it didn't matter to them, including people who once cared a lot about morality in a president, not so much anymore. But to me, it's like, okay, this almost certainly happened. The American people kind of assumed this type of thing about Donald Trump. He won anyway. So what? Now what?
Leslie,
I don't think there's much there unless you can totally pin them on a campaign finance violation.
Leslie, I certainly can understand the politics of this, and I'm wondering how you see it from your perspective.
Well, from my perspective, Guy, we agree. You know, I mean, this is a guy, you know, he cheated once, he cheated twice, he probably cheated again. I agree with you. I believe all the women that have accused him of everything with regarding sex, to just put it out there and be honest.
All of them?
But
of
Dana,
everything?
all of them and everything, yes. The two issues here are, one, and I agree with Guy, if the only criminality is twofold, actually. I'll go further. One, if there is any illegal campaign funding and finance. And second, well, I'm going to go three, actually. Okay. If, in fact, she could prove this alleged threat, which you can if there are security cameras with facial recognition, if the guy drove a car where they can, you know, get the license plate and find him and interview him. And then third would be if the president ends up being deposed, or if she gets her day in court, and if the president maintains he did not have an affair and there is proof of that affair, then he ends up being like Bill Clinton with Paula Jones all over again.
Well, we will see where it goes. Rajah didn't give them a lot to advance the story with today.
Which is smart.
No doubt there will be more to come. All right, Leslie Marshall and Guy Benson, thank you.
Thanks, Dana.